Welcome to biology. Today's topic is the characteristics of living things. As you preview these videos, remember that you have the ability to pause and rewind. This will allow you to take better notes and go back over things that you might have missed. So, if you're ready, let's proceed. Let's begin with the first of these characteristics. All living things are made up of one or more cells. The most simple of all cells is a prokaryote. Prokaryotes are very tiny, the smallest of all cells, and prokaryotes do not have a nucleus. In fact, prokaryote means before the nucleus. All prokaryotes are unicellular, which means that there's only one cell in that living organism. Here we see many different individuals in this population. A different type of cell is a eukaryote. Eukaryote means true nucleus. Many eukaryotes are unicellular. However, there are other examples of eukaryotes as well. There are some eukaryotes that are colonial, where there are many very similar cells all collected together. Volvox is an example. And then there are multicellular eukaryotes. In multicellular eukaryotes, the cells come in a variety of types. Here we see some muscle cells. Living things display organization from the most basic level to the highest level. These levels include atoms and molecules. All substances are chemicals and are made up of atoms, and these atoms bond together to form molecules. Many of these different types of molecules include proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. And the combination of these various molecules form the organelles, which then form the cell. Tissues are comprised of identical cells which carry out a specific function. Organs are made up of many tissues. These tissues work together to accomplish a task. A body system is a collection of related organs which then serve an overall function to the body. For example, the skeletal system is made up of many organs, and together they provide the structural support to the body. A typical organism is comprised of several systems, each of which provides some sort of necessary function to the survival of that organism. In the wolf, these systems include the skeletal, vascular, digestive, nervous, as well as many other types of systems. A population is a collection of several organisms of the same species, and they all live in the same geographical area. To be part of the same population, there must be the potential for interaction and the ability to reproduce with each other. A community is comprised of several populations of many different species. The community in the example includes not only wolves, but also rabbits, grasses, trees, and countless other species. Keep in mind that the community is made up of only living things. The ecosystem includes the community, also known as the biotic factors, as well as the non-living abiotic factors such as water, sunlight, geography, temperature, and many other things. The entire collection of all living things is found within a space called the biosphere. The only known biosphere is found on the Earth, but includes only the areas where life exists. For example, the middle of the Earth is inhospitable to life and is not part of the biosphere. Growth and development. Growth occurs simply when an organism becomes larger. Development is the result of changes that occur in that organism as it grows from a juvenile to an adult. Here we see the example of a frog. The frog begins as an egg. The egg develops into a tadpole. The tadpole eventually grows legs, loses its tail, and develops into an adult frog. The flower is the reproductive structure of a plant. Here we see sperm cells surrounding an egg cell. While it is true that not all living things reproduce, it must be remembered that all living things came about as the result of either asexual or sexual reproduction. Keep in mind that asexual reproduction involves just a single parent that clones itself in some manner, and there are several ways that an organism may clone itself. Sexual reproduction involves the union of a sperm cell with an egg cell. Often this means there are two parents, or it could be that the male reproductive cell and the female reproductive cell came from the same organism, such as we find in many plants and a few animals. All living things respond to stimuli. Here we see plants responding to sunlight. Plants want to optimize their exposure to sunlight, and so they grow to face the sun. The rabbit to the right displays large ears. These large ears, of course, can sense the sound of an approaching predator. In the example with the plant, the sunlight is the stimulus and the growth is the response. In the rabbit example, sound is the stimulus and running from the predator is the response. In both cases, an organism senses a change in its surroundings and responds in some manner. All living things require energy. The plant to the right obtains its energy through the process of photosynthesis as its leaves absorb sunlight and stores that energy in sugar molecules. The bird obtains its energy by eating the worm. All organisms need energy in order to perform any and all tasks that they must do. Whether this is growing, reproducing, searching for food, there are many different tasks, but all of them require energy. Homeostasis. In a single word, homeostasis means balance. All living things must maintain a certain balance in things like body temperature, glucose levels, water concentrations. The dog that you see pictured here is regulating its body temperature by panting. Panting allows for something known as evaporative cooling. As the moisture from the dog's mouth evaporates, it carries heat energy away from the dog, thus cooling the dog. The final characteristic of living things is evolution. Populations of living things evolve from one species to another over time. One example of evidence of this process is displayed to the right. The evolution of the horse is demonstrated by comparing the modern-day skeleton of a horse with that of fossil species. Transitions in features such as the skull, toes, and the size of the skeleton are seen. As we look at the skeleton, we'll notice that the modern-day skeleton is much larger than its distant ancestor depicted at the bottom. We also notice that the shape of the skull has changed somewhat over time. Very interestingly, the position of the toes has changed. In the modern-day horse, we see that the horse runs upon one toe, and that the other toes are much higher up on its leg. But in the ancestors, we'll see that the horse ran upon 3 toes. The thing to remember is that non-living things may display a couple of these traits, but all living organisms display all of these traits. You will be quizzed over this material. The quiz will require that you know the 8 different characteristics of life and that you can describe each characteristic. Check with the teacher for the quiz date.